Hi, I'm Spencer Oldham. I've been with Hardbase Sea Rescue for 35 years and I'm currently the station commander of the station. I joined Sea Rescue in 1982, I think it was. Started off in Johannesburg at Station-8. It was a mobile sea rescue station in its infancy. They were running the Formula 1 powerboat rescue courses on Siaswat Dam and the rest of the dams of Johannesburg, and they put together a very small sea rescue station to follow the Formula 1 rescue boats around. We then moved down to Cape Town in now you ask me dates, it was 1989. My father and myself joined Simonstown Sea Rescue Base. We stayed there under Commander Vic Jacker, I think it was, and the boys. And then we left Simonstown and moved to Hart Bay in 1989, 1990, around about there. Joined as a trainee crew in Simonstown, and then I became crew in Simonstown in those days. It was a lot easier than it is these days. And then my father and I moved through to Hart Bay. And then I continued on as crew in Hart Bay for several years. I was allocated to Ian Klopper's crew. And then I also, from that crew, I moved on to Bruce Bobman's crew. And we sat on Bravo crew for several years. And then they started a coxswain development course. We're talking early 90s, which was developed by Bruce Bobman originally. And that was instigated about 8 months of training on the Class 2 boats. At that time we had a 5.5 meter and an we'd moved on to the 12 meter Spirit of Rotary then. And that course took about a year to get through. And then at the end of the day, if I remember correctly, Brad Geezer was the station commander and he took the papers and signed off, and that was how you got your coxswain tickets in those days. After becoming a Class 2 coxswain, we was allocated to a crew. In those days we were running under a senior Class 2 coxswain, so you didn't just become a Class 2 coxswain, you had to work your time in. And then after that we operated as a Class 2 coxswain. I did that for several years, and then Hart Bay's always had 4 crews, and we have always had 4 Class 1 coxswains as a minimum, 1 on each crew. And at that time Andy de Kock was the Class 1 coxswain on, I think it was Bravo crew, I can't remember which crew it was, and Andy had to leave to go overseas. And this was the days for Class 1 assessments and stuff. It was a case of, right, you're next in line. Do you want to do it? Yes, congratulations. There's your Class 1 ticket. And that's how it rolled in those days. So I went from a Class 3 coxswain to a Class 1 coxswain. We did a bit of an assessment on base, which consisted of towing the yacht and rafting the yacht up and bringing it back in again. And that was it. There was no coal regs. There was no PEV exams. So then basically once I got my Class 1 ticket, I got allocated a crew, and that was the start of my Class 1 career. It was about 2007. On that crew I had Lyle, who was a future station commander in Class 1 coxswain. There was Sven, Dean, Paul. So most of the crew now that I have were on my first crew. We continued on with the calls and stuff, and then around about 2010, I think it was, I took over the role as training officer on the base, and we did that for 10 years. So we started redeveloping the coxswains training courses. We put together with several of the Class 1 coxswains on the base what we regarded as our requirements for coxswain training on the ribs specifically, and that turned out to be a year's course which we ran on the base. It was every weekend, or more or less every weekend, and a very in-depth training course which the guys and girls ended up getting assessed for and doing practical assessments and navigation exams and bringing in coal rigs after a few incidents we'd had on the base with lack of knowledge of coal rigs. And from what I understand, our 2014 course that we ran was the last coxswains training course we did on the base. After that, the training department was started at head office, and then they took over all the assessments of coxswains going forward since 2015. Yeah, so after the training department took over, we started doing a lot of training sessions with the different bases. At the time, Lyle was the station commander, and we did a lot of interbase training with the stations around in Region 1. Obviously preparing guys for coxswains training going forward. There was a lot of movement on the base with people emigrating and immigrating with new trainees and that, so it was always been quite an active base and that sort of stuff. Lyle stood down and then Jeff became station commander, and we continued with the 4 crews operating as a station for 3 years, and then COVID hit in the middle of that, which put the cock on it. After that, I was nominated station commander in 2022. I've been doing the job now for 18 months, coming on to 2 years now. We've made several changes on the base since taking over. More along the guys with new equipment and different strategies on how to recover training and training of trainees and crew on the base. We're also trying to undergo a new base rebuild, which has been going on for about 8 years, and it looks like we're finally getting there. And obviously with the new step out of equipment with regards to Class 1 vessels, and that we are looking within the next year or two of receiving one of the orc hulls. So we are ready now, stepping up training and getting our Class 1 coxswains on the base qualified already to when was it? 2002, I think it was, maybe before that. There was a decision made to start an airborne sea rescue unit in Cape Town, and I was one of the founding members of the ASR unit. There's several of the old guys who are the founding members are still around, but you get issued a number when you start ASR. My number was 007, so I think they're running now at about 69 or 70, around that number, so it was a long time ago. In 2004, a group of us left to the UK to go train with the RAF at RAF Valley in North Wales in Anglesey, to go train with their search and rescue units on the Sea King helicopters. It was a week's intense training. And then we came back to South Africa to share that training with 22 Squadron and the ASR unit. And that forms most of the basis of the SOPs that the ASR are still working on these days. I continued doing ASR work for about 14 years and then had kids. And the time load for sea rescue and kids and family and ASR sort of came to a crunch, so the ASR parted ways. There were several good rescues in the ASR. The first rescue they ever did was we had a missing fisherman up near Langebaan, Mykonos, and we ended up flying up. It was a 2-day operation up to Mykonos, and I can remember landing, well, not landing, the Oryx landed in the car park of the casino up at Mykonos, and we got out for the night and ended up staying over at one of the crewmen's house in Station 4 Mykonos. And we ended up getting back to the aircraft in the morning, and somebody had slapped a parking ticket on it because Major Mac had parked the helicopter in a no parking zone, and he was not impressed that they had a parking ticket on this Air Force Oryx. That was one of the first rescues we did. There was quite a few. One of the other ones was the ski boat or the paddle skier in False Bay, which we were looking for, and we were doing operation, I can't remember, it was up, I think we were up north side, sorry everyone, and we deployed down to False Bay. And as you flew over False Bay Beach heading towards Gordons Bay, we crossed over the paddle skier in the water and winched him out. It was quite a close call. It's one of the books years ago. Oh, so the ASR was many years of good fun and hard training, but that had to come to an end at some stage. Okay, with regards to rescues, obviously with a 35-year slog on it, there's been quite a memorable few rescues. For me, there's been a few. The one was Operation Elbow Grease, which was a yacht that had come around Cape Point and lost navigation and steerage, and sent out a mayday, which was picked up by Cape Town radio. But the problem was the yacht was drifting offshore, and we launched her early in the afternoon with one of the deep sea rescue vessel, and we contacted the vessel eventually. It was 80 nautical miles offshore, so 80 nautical miles offshore. The navigation in those days was quite intricate. We had to start plotting drift patterns and updating waypoints and carrying on with Cape Town radio. Obviously we got to the stage where we had very little VHF communications with the station. We were working directly out of Cape Town on Channel 16, and either due to very good navigation skills of the crew and pot luck and everything else that goes into it, we eventually picked up the yacht about half an hour before sunset at 78 miles offshore, and we finally honed in on it with the VHF DF which we have on the boat. And if it wasn't for the DF, we never would have found the crew member. His battery, his handheld radio was on the last legs. It lost power on the yacht. We eventually got the yacht alongside, and made the decision to transfer the skipper onto the yacht, onto Rescue-8, which took about half an hour, at which stage now the sea conditions are running at sort of force 8, the winds picked up, it was proper hairy, and transferred the skipper onto to Rescue-8 and started heading back. Obviously fuel concerns now, due to the fact that we've been trying to find the guy. We're down to about just over 50% fuel load on the boat, and we've still got to get back, well, about 60%, we've still got to get back 80 miles navigation back in the dark in heavy weather back through to Cape Town, to Hard Bay rather. Halfway through, the yacht's rudder had sheared, so the yacht was going all over the place, unable to tow. So we had to get permission to abandon the yacht at sea. So we cut the yacht loose and started heading back to Hard Bay with the skipper and crew. Again, navigating back that far off was interesting, to say the least. And we managed to get back to Hard Bay. I think we got back at about 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, just before sunrise. It had been a full 18-hour trip directly offshore, 80 miles, so not up the coast, but 80 miles from land, the nearest point of land at that stage. And it was quite a hairy call. We got back, I think we had about 5% fuel left on the boat, something along those long lines, so that was a good call. And the second memorable call that we've done on the base was Moroshko. It's probably one of the biggest single calls that's been done in sea rescue. So we've done the longest call offshore and probably the biggest joint operation call, or disaster call that we had. And for me that was quite interesting because it was the first day I had my son with me. The day started off doing rat training, which is rope access training, up on Chapman's Peak, and it was a Saturday, and I was like, well, what could possibly go wrong? So I'll take my 7 or 8-year-old son with me and be up on Chapman's Peak, and it's going to be a great day. We can sit in the sun and play some ropes and stuff. And then Mayday started going out, and Moroshko came to being. Another fun fact on this one was, at the time Lyle had just been nominated station commander, and I think he'd been the StatCom for about 4 months, and it was his first major call out as station commander. So he got put through the ringer properly on that one. Moroshka was a whale viewing vessel which is being used for tourists trips. So they were taking tourist trips out to Seal Island, which is around the corner here. And yeah, I'm not going into the whole why it sank, but it started taking on water and started sinking, and literally had about 40 or 50 people on board. And the vessel sank and capsized, and all the people ended up in the water. Unfortunately, one or two of the crew ended up deceased on the call. But the operation involved extricating all the people from just around the corner down Seal Island in pretty windy, hectic sea conditions back to the base, accounting for mass casualties. And then once they started tallying the numbers of who was on the boat against who we had at the base, there were several people missing. Several were trapped inside the hull, upturned hull, which was now drifting off towards Cape Town. And they ended up getting dive units in and extricating them underwater through the boat, which was still drifting over, heading in towards the rocks. And then eventually we accounted for all the people on the boat, and the boat was left to drift off towards Cape Town into the sunset. For me it was quite interesting because my son, I couldn't leave him at the base on his own. So on that call I didn't go out to sea. We ended up taking the mobile out and started doing radio relays from Chapman's Peak and up Rocket Road. And I can remember my wife phoning me halfway through and asking me if I had food for Greg, and Greg hadn't had anything to eat for 12 hours. So he was eating energy bars and Red Bulls and Coke. So probably not my best parenting moment, but from a call-out perspective, it was pretty intense. And now this year, my son's actually joined the crew as a trainee. So it's gone full circle. So he's probably one of the longest serving trainees on the base, being around for about 15 years. Okay, so advice for trainees and new crew. One thing that's always struck me is the enthusiastic trainees always seem to last, and trainees that join with an idea of coming down once a month and doing the minimum amount tend not to stick around for a while. Currently we have a lot of trainees that are young students, high school students, and they will obviously do as much as they can, but they've got varsity and life changes and that. So we do have a lot of movement of crew on the base. But the advice is if you stick around and give it your best and try to absorb and learn and ask questions, then you will go pretty far in sea rescue. You need the dedication, you need the time availability, and people ask me, like, what does it consist of? Is it just coming down on a Friday night boat checks and then go out for 2 hours on a Sunday and then a meeting once a month? And if that's your concept of what sea rescue is, then you're not going to last long at it. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of effort to learn, but it's same as most things in life. What you put in is what you get out. And I can tell you now from my experience is if you put the effort in, you do get the efforts out. It is well worth it in the end. There's lots of lives been saved. You get to do amazing rescues, whether it's going 80 miles offshore to save the solo yachty, or getting knee deep in the Moroshka mass incident call-outs that we have around Cape Town and around the country, to amazing animal rescues. We've had so many whale rescues where we saved one whale off Landudno, and it took us a long time. And there's a great video of it actually. But we eventually cut this whale loose, and it took a while, and the guys were very sweaty afterwards. But the whale actually came up and sort of breached next to the boat, which sort of looked like a big thank you, and then headed off to his pack, and they went off on their summer holiday to Hermanus by the looks of it. But it was all on film, and it's great to see it. You don't often, like, you'll leave the harbour in summer and there'll be hundreds of dolphins around you, and you don't get that experience if you don't put the time in.